Previously on Weight Loss Transformation interview with Anand. As a 12-year-old, he weighed well over 200 pounds. As a teenager, he was close to 300 pounds with a waist size of 50 inches and 50% of his body was fat. He has since lost over 125 pounds and kept it off for 6 years. He is an online and in-person fat loss and strength coach in Mountain View, California, and he's also a power lifter. Talk about 180 turn. Welcome to the next part of the interview. We're going to continue to cover all of this, and this part is also packed with 20 actionable tips to get you working smarter towards your fat loss goal. Anand talks about how to know if you're actually in a plateau, what to do if you're actually in one, how to tell which fitness influencers are marketers versus actual coaches, and much more. If you want to get notified when the next part of this interview drops, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and also hit that bell icon. I love the idea of setting goals and especially breaking it down. And then there are two things that I've noticed happen. Number one, what is a reasonable amount of goal to set when you're trying to lose weight? Because people come to me and they're like, I want to lose like 5 pounds in a week or something.
Yeah.
Right? And then the second thing is you mentioned hitting plateaus. And then people just feel like things are not working, and then they just go through, you know, like how you said, like you got complacent when you bounced back. It was just like, let's just give up. This is what I'm meant to do.
Yeah.
So those are two things that goal setting is good, like on paper, but then in reality, you don't always hit it, or sometimes you don't set it right. And what are your answers to those two things?
When it comes to fat loss, there's different ways of achieving it. That you can either go fast or slow. A lot of it depends on your level of experience and your personality as well. For me, I've done all sorts of diets. I've done like super slow diets. I've done moderate diets. I've even done like really extreme, like rapid fat loss diets. And I've had success with all of them because I was doing it more out of curiosity, just trying out different things. But it, for a lot of people, they might, if you put them on a faster diet, like a rapid fat loss, it may not be sustainable for them because they're just gonna get really hungry and stuff like that, and they're just gonna regain all the weight. Especially if you're a beginner, I would say, if you're a beginner, a good amount of weight loss would be about like 1% of your body weight. Is a good goal, or anywhere between like half to 1% is a moderate to sustainable goal for most people.
Per what time period?
Per week. So if you weigh 200 pounds, you can lose up to 2 pounds a week.
Right.
And that's like a good rate. If you're like, it also depends on how lean you are. If you're leaner, you probably want to slow it down a little bit because your body is going to be more reluctant to let go of that fat, right?
Yeah.
And if you're like, let's say 150 pounds but already lean and you want to get even leaner, you might want to slow it down to maybe 0.5%. And also depends on, I mean, there's so many scenarios. It's quite it varies from person to person. Like my what I did recently was, so I competed in powerlifting, and last time I competed more than a year ago, I was in the 183 pound weight class, and I just dropped an entire weight class doing a rapid fat loss, but I maintained all my strength. So I'm still like almost equally strong, but I'm like 20 pounds lighter. So pound for pound, I'm much stronger now.
Right.
So, but like I said, I have a lot of experience doing this. I know exactly what my body responds to and how it reacts, so I can do these things. But for most people, anywhere between 0.5 to 1% of your body weight is pretty sustainable.
Yeah, I agree with that goal. I think that's very reasonable. Tell us about your first plateau, what you reacted like, and what would you say to people? Because it seems like people start losing weight, as you said, very quickly in the beginning, and then they hit a plateau and they're like, nothing's working, give up.
Yeah. So when you want to lose weight, you definitely gonna hit that plateau. So be prepared for that. And I personally didn't, like I said, didn't have any coach or guidance back then, and I tend to be like I said, very obsessive when it comes to going after my goals. So I was like, if I didn't lose my 2 pounds this week, then what do I do?
Yeah.
And I used to freak out about it, and I ended up almost always I ended up like cutting my calories way more than I need to.
Mm.
So, I'm like, my diet has just stopped working, and so I need to eat even less. I need to do more cardio. So I was instead of being more patient about it, I just made some drastic changes that actually didn't give me the best results in the long term. And I had to
Mm-hmm.
learn this the hard way, because uh, up to that point I was making good progress, but then once I started to like freak out, um, I just started to lose our strength. And I
Right.
remember I got pretty light, I got pretty lean, but I was like I was under 160 pounds, so I was just about the same weight as I am right now. And this is
Mm-hmm.
like 5 years ago or something, 5, 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I could barely even squat 180 pounds because I got so weak.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just cut my calories and just did a lot of cardio.
Right.
And right now I'm about the same weight. And last week I competed and I squatted like almost 360 pounds.
Wow, nice.
So double the squat as at the same body weight,
Right.
because I'm doing things the right way now.
Right.
And
Right.
and I would say when you hit a plateau, first of all, make sure it's a plateau,
Mm-hmm.
because things like your body weight, they fluctuate day by day. So if you're not weighing yourself consistently, ideally I recommend my clients that they weigh themselves in the morning without eating or drinking anything, because that's going to give you a more accurate picture and
Mm-hmm.
more consistent picture. But you should also weigh yourself at least a few days a week, if not every day,
Mm-hmm.
and take a weekly average and then compare that weekly average to the next week, because that's going to give you a more accurate picture. So first of all, you need to make sure you've hit a plateau. The other thing is, even if you do all these things, you're very accurate and very consistent with your veins,
Mm-hmm.
it might not reflect on the scale right away.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because of a variety of reasons. Because one of them is, when you diet, it's a stressor on your body, and oftentimes when your body is under stress, you kind of retain a little bit of water weight.
Mm-hmm.
So even if your adipose tissue and your fat cells have emptied of the fat, it kind of holds on to some water. And in that situation, all you need to do is just wait it out, because eventually you're gonna find, and this has happened to so many of my clients,
Mm-hmm.
uh, they're like, I didn't lose any weight this week. What should I do? And I'm like, let's just stick with it,
Yeah.
because I know they're doing the right thing in terms of working
Right.
out.
Right.
But almost without fail, like within 2 weeks or 3 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
closer to 2 weeks, they experience something called the whoosh. Even though you might have lost fat, it doesn't really show right away, because it's a delayed effect. But oftentimes when don't you stop stressing out about it, or you might even have like a high carb day or something, it usually kind of lowers your cortisol levels, and you often experience that whoosh. And so that's very common. So first of all, you got to measure yourself properly. And if you don't want to use the scale, then maybe use, or maybe don't just use the scale, use the scale and maybe something like a tape measure or progress pictures,
Right.
because those are also signs of progress.
Right.
Um, and then even if you think you aren't making progress, just wait it out for like 2 or 3 weeks, because oftentimes if your plan, you are on your plan, then you should be making progress, and oftentimes you don't really need to adjust, and it's just a matter of time before you're going to see those changes.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say you've done all of that, you measured yourself and you waited it out for 2 or 3 weeks, and you haven't cheated on your diet, haven't had any crazy binges or anything,
Yeah.
then then it's time to make an adjustment. And I would say make a very small adjustment, because it's you don't want to shock your body too much, first of all, because dieting is hard anyway, and if you're causing extra stress on your body, it's just gonna mess things up in the long term in terms of uh, helping you stick to your diet. So
Yeah.
maybe do 10 more minutes of cardio, like per
Mm-hmm.
day or something like that, or just go out for a walk for 10 minutes, or maybe cut out like anywhere between 50 to 100 calories from your diet. Like you
Right.
don't have to cut out like 500 calories from your diet,
Yeah.
thinking, that's going to help me lose like 1 more pound or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that,
Tot- Yeah,
So I would say make those small adjustments and then see for a week or two, see if that makes a difference. Chances are, if you stick to it, it's gonna make that difference. If it's already been working for you so far, the only reason why it stops working is because you might have lost a significant amount of weight,
Mhm.
and then you gotta make adjustments based on your new body weight. That's typically what happens.
Right, right. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and thank you for like putting it in one, two, three, and basically don't freak out, like,
Yeah.
and make like crazy adjustments.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah. Why do people hire a coach? It's like, yeah, they can guide you, um, but the truth is, most people actually know what they need to do, but they just can't seem to do it, right? It's
Right.
like most people know that they need to eat less and they need to exercise more, but they can't do it, right? And there's a lot of reasons. They might either lack the experience, they might have like paralysis by analysis, they don't
Mm,
know where to start. But one of the biggest things, and this is the reason why even I, who I coach people, I hire coaches myself, whether it's for my powerlifting, whether it's for my business,
right.
uh, whether it's like personal development. I have like at least 3 or 4 coaches right now for these different areas of my life,
Mm,
and that's because they keep me accountable. Like they call me out if I don't do stuff, and I feel a lot of people are accountable to more accountable to other people than they are to themselves.
mm,
Like I personally didn't have much of a coach when I was starting, even though I wish I did. But times were different back then. You didn't have like so much access, and I couldn't listen to the local trainers because I knew they were wrong. So I was pretty much by myself,
mm.
and
How did you know they were wrong? I'm curious.
so a lot of trial and error, obviously, because clearly it wasn't working
Yeah.
on me. I just it didn't make sense to me, just based on the limited understanding I had of how the body works, right? I had access to good information early on, like not extremely early, but as soon as I had access to the internet, this is what I started researching. Like there was no social media, but there was like forums and there was like websites like bodybuilding.com and
Mm,
the bodybuilding.com forums. And that's where I found a lot of these smart people and
mm,
connected with them. Like
mm,
one of the first guys I found was Dr. Lane Norton.
mm.
You know who he
I
is?
know him.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yeah.
fortunately, I I found him, and he actually had a series on bodybuilding.com, which is no longer there. Like you can find the videos anywhere. I
Yeah.
wish. I think someone tried to re-upload it on YouTube, but it's called "Inside the Life of a Natural Pro,"
Hmm.
and he was talking about his own bodybuilding journey, and he
Hmm.
was like a young guy back then, like in his early 20s or something. So but he was. I'm like, this guy is really smart because he's doing his PhD, but at the same time, he actually practices what he preaches. He's not some kind of scientist that's just sitting in a lab and telling you what to do. And he's
Right.
he's like a high level bodybuilder, and that's how I even found powerlifting because of
Yeah.
all this, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so just that basic knowledge from these people lets you filter out a lot of things. And
Mm,
um, I think if people do even a little bit of research online, like they don't need to be experts, but they try to learn basic physiology, like how the body works, energy balance, what is fat mass, lean body mass, muscles,
yeah.
just basic anatomy. You can filter out when someone's trying to
Yeah.
either misguide you. And there's a lot of scam artists out there, like not just in
Yeah.
fitness but especially in fitness. Yeah, it's because
Yeah.
people are gullible.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But if you can educate yourself, and it's not just with fitness, right? Let's say if you're not financially literate or whatever, and then you just end up giving your money to someone who's like, I'm gonna double your money, then whose fault is it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
I
and
like.
we've all done that,
Yeah.
like for my example, like last year I put in a lot of money into like Bitcoin without
Yeah.
knowing what it is, just because everyone's doing it.
Yeah, yeah, totally, totally.
So
Yeah. And I want to emphasize like two things that you said there, which I think like there is a lot of information out there and people get lost in it. I think one thing you said was people who are actually doing it. I
mhm.
think watching what people are doing, because sometimes even the people who are doing it, they will tell you things that they aren't doing. But
Yeah.
because of partnerships or because of affiliation, they will say things. So I really liked that idea of like, they're actually doing what they're saying. And I think the other piece is like sometimes people go look for information, but the kind of information they're looking for is not the kind of stuff that you said, which is how does the body work? How
Yeah,
do energy balance? What they look for is like the keto book for whatever, or like
yeah,
the whole, it's already pigeonholed into a solution. It's kind of like learning how to do something advanced or something like without having the foundation of like why that thing works.
putting the cart before the horse, as
Yeah.
Eric Helms likes to say. You gotta have the foundation first, and then it's like I remember when I was going through my transformation, people used to come up to me, and instead of asking me stuff like what kind of training program are you following or what kind of diet are you on, they were like, what kind of protein powder are you using?
Yeah.
So that's just what they're looking for, like what kind of
Yeah.
supplements do you take?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So that's pretty awesome that you already had a doubt and you went and looked for at the right information. That's pretty awesome. Could you speak to the thing like, okay, after you lost 100 pounds, how did what have you been like doing in the past 6 years? Like, how have your goals changed? Because I think
Yeah,
that's the other piece that lots of people don't think about. And it's like, it's not like you're going to achieve your goal and you can eat whatever you want. You
yeah,
know?
that's
Yeah.
right. That's
Yeah.
right. Because if you go back to eating whatever you want, it's gonna give you the same results, right? So
Yeah.
it wasn't like, I lost this weight and now it's time to celebrate. I already had other goals in mind, right?
Yeah.
And my focus was shifting more towards strength,
Yeah.
just getting stronger.
Right.
Uh, because I really enjoyed, like I said, lifting weights and getting stronger. Because
Right.
and strength is, I would say, more of a process than just body or how your body looks. Like most people focus on, I want to look a certain way, but they don't focus on what's gonna get them there,
Right.
which is the
Right.
actual getting stronger part of things. Like making progress in the gym, seeing your numbers go up, doing more reps, doing more sets,
Right.
lifting.
Right.
I do compare myself in terms of my numbers, and I still have my old training logs from like almost a decade ago, like in my
Yeah.
notebooks. And I was
Yeah.
just looking at, I was writing it all down when I used to live back in India.
Yeah.
It's
Nice.
crazy to see, how far I've come.
Yeah. What does it feel like looking back at those notebooks? Do they look very different or do they look very similar to what you have now?
They surprisingly look very similar. Uh, Not much has changed because I was focusing on the fundamentals, like I said, the compound movements. I'm
Yeah.
still doing pretty much the same exercises. I'm much better at them. I'm lifting heavier at a much lighter body weights, things like that.
Yeah.
But not much has changed.
Yeah, yeah. And I think this is also really important for people to hear because I think there's a lot of people who sell like, I'm going to pay me $19 and I'm going to send you a new program every week.
Yeah,
And yeah, like my experience reflects your experience, which is like I'm pretty much doing the same things. Like
yeah.
still.
And
Yes.
and and I would say that also depends on your personality, right?
Yeah.
Because if you ever done like a personality test, like the big five personality test or something, attributes of your personality is like openness, right?
Yeah.
So some people are who are very high on openness. They always want to try new things. So
Mhm.
if you have clients like that, you gotta mix it up a little bit. It's still
Mhm.
the fundamentals, but they get bored very easily.
Right, right.
Whereas someone like myself, or even like a lot of people who get into powerlifting, are not that high in openness, so they don't mind doing the same thing over and over again, just that routine, right? So
Yeah.
it's like powerlifting is three lifts: squat, bench, and deadlift, and
Yeah.
you do variations of that, but for the most part, most of your training is gonna be that, right? So
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
day in day out, all that's all you're doing, and then
Yeah.
you add in other exercises to support that, but
Yeah.
that's your main goal.
Yeah.
So it also depends on your personality. I think people who are more higher in the openness scale, they might want to do something like, I don't know, CrossFit or some other sports, right, where they're always switching things up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's also something to consider.
And what would you say in like if someone is doing weightlifting, like
Yeah.
how often is you're getting it to be too often, even if you are someone who needs variety?
Oh, you mean like the training frequency? Like
Yeah,
how?
yeah. So for example, like if you're changing up your training every week, is
Okay.
that yeah, or like versus every I don't know X amount of time?
Yeah, I would say changing it up every week is not a good thing, because typically you especially if you're an intermediate person, like you're not a complete beginner, you typically gonna make progress every single week.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you know if you're making progress if you're switching things up all the time, right?
Yes.
So you gotta compare apples to apples, and I would say you should at least give that program um, 4 weeks at least,
Mm-hmm.
and then compare week to week and before switching it up. That's typically what I do. So if you
Mm-hmm.
wanted to do a 12-week program, you can have like three separate phases into that of 1 or 4 weeks each.
Right.
And in terms of powerlifting, they also call this block
Mm-hmm.
periodization, where
Right.
they have certain blocks in their training, but usually they just follow one block that's designed to achieve one goal. Like
Mm-hmm.
let's say one block is just designed to have them gain more muscle mass, like
Mm-hmm.
hypertrophy,
Right.
and then they transition to more of a strength block, which is
Mm-hmm.
more heavier lifting, and then they might do like a peaking block. So it all depends, but I would say give it at least 4 weeks before making changes. And just like your weight loss plateau, right? Because
Right.
you don't want to change your diet every week.
Yeah.
You want to
Yeah.
stick to it and compare it week to week
Yeah.
until it stops working for 2 or 3 weeks. Then you know it's time to make a change.
Yeah.
And same
Would
thing
you?
with training.
Yes. And would you say the same thing to a beginner person, like a complete newbie who's just starting off? 4 weeks, or would you say a longer period or shorter period? What would you say?
Beginner, I would recommend a longer period, even though as a beginner you can make faster progress.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're constantly changing things up, you can get lost pretty easily.
Yeah.
And a lot of these novice programs are actually very simple. Like I mentioned starting strength earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
And basically, the starting strength program is you do, like especially on the squats, you do like 3 sets of 5 3 times a week. So
Right.
there's not much exercise variety.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same movements, but it also, the other great thing about that is it gives you a lot of time to practice and get better at those movements. If you let's say you take someone who's squatting 2 or 3 times a week for 8 weeks versus someone who squats 1 week and then he doesn't squat the next week and then he changes it up, who's gonna get better, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a skill component to it, right? So definitely, I would say beginners, if you can stick to a program for longer,
Yeah.
because when you stick to something longer, you're also gonna learn what you like, what you don't like, what's working, what's not working, right? So
Right.
it's gonna. But if you switching things up, you don't even know what's working, what's not working.
You did not celebrate after you achieved your goal,
No.
and you had more goals, which is I think in my experience is very natural with my clients. Like once they meet their goal, I'm like, oh, you're about to say goodbye, and they're like, no, I have a new goal. Is that something that happens to you as well?
With my clients, yeah, I would say so, because typically the kind of people like you and I, like the kind of people we attract, are gonna be more dedicated people anyway,
Right.
because the kind of language we use in our marketing is not your typical language. I have a really good understanding of like copywriting and stuff, and I've read so many pieces of copy by other fitness professionals who
Right.
are not really, I wouldn't say they're bad people, but they're just marketers at the end of the day. They're not really the best coaches,
Right.
uh,
Yes.
so the kind of language that they use is always gonna provide you with that quick fix and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And maybe the program might help you do that, maybe not. But the kind of language that we use, we use terms like sustainability
Yeah.
and things like do what works for you
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yes.
And that's,
Mindset, all the non-sexy stuff.
yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
so that doesn't sell to the mainstream, but the kind of people that will come to you are typically gonna be more dedicated, right?
Yeah.
They don't mind putting in the work. So I actually like working with these kind of people, and
Yeah.
that's just the kind of people you attract.
Yeah, yeah, I 100% agree with you. Yeah, I'm curious because on your channel you talk about mindset a lot, which is something that on my channel I talk a lot about mindset. It gets the least clicks, the least watch time out of everything.
Yeah.
But you've mentioned like I loved your thing where like 80% is mindset and 20% is the mechanics, and I 100% agree. Which is why I think most of the channels on YouTube are all about the mechanics, but because that's the sexy stuff everyone wants to look at.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, just personally, like you've mentioned, like you need to have the success mindset. You said in one of your videos. Would you like break down on like what are those like maybe top 1 to 3 success mindsets that you like really try to hone into your clients, day in, day out? Hey there, if you want to know when the next episode drops, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and also hit that bell icon. Until then, keep crushing it.